Hi, I'm Judy Burr, the Executive Director of Project Hope for the Homeless, and I've been the Director of the shelter and all of its support services for 30 years. So when we first began the shelter, it was a task force formed by the Catholic Commission of Lake and Geauga County, and they got a group of local churches and nonprofits together to help solve the homeless epidemic. And at that time, it was a real political hot potato. We couldn't get it off the ground in other forums, so it made sense that the local church would come together and sort of treat it as if it were the Boy Scouts sleeping over. So we would go to local churches and sleep in their Sunday school rooms and leave in the daytime. So it was a 9 p.m. operation to 7 a.m. at that time, and it worked very, very well in the beginning. Our first site was Willoughby Hills United Methodist Church, and we used to meet everybody in a caravan over at the corner of 91 and Euclid Avenue, and we would meet the bus there, and then anybody that had cars would follow us back to the site, or they would just get in our vehicles and we would drive them to the site because it was off of Eddy Road in Willoughby Hills. The first 7 years of the shelter, we went from church to church, and there were, I think it was Willoughby Hills United Methodist Church, Willoughby First Christian Church, Menor Plains United Methodist Church, and then we ended up at Paynesville United Methodist Church for 5 consecutive winters. And it was a great location because it's the central point for all the services in the county were right there, so it worked out really well. The only problem is it was not meant to be a long-term situation. So we had a task force that ended up searching, and I think we searched 60 different properties in Lake County, and we were told no 60 different times. It is something that people fear, homelessness, so I think having that come to their community, they weren't sure. They thought maybe it would be a flop house, but it really ended up being a lot more than some place to sleep. But at the time, people didn't know that, and they had fears and concerns. So it took us a good 10 years to prove ourselves. It wasn't until the Christmas of 2000 that Freedom Road found us. So when I was a homeless outreach worker, I would drive these streets continuously looking for people who looked like they were kind of lost and hungry and needed some support, and then I would establish like a rapport with them, and just by either meeting them at the same time and place every day, or taking them to appointments, doctor's appointments, and whatever they needed. So down the hill is the Main Street Bridge, and that's where a lot of people go that are unsheltered. So in other words, if the shelter's full, or if there is a problem where they're not able to come to the shelter for whatever reason, sometimes that's by choice, then they live outside. And they have even learned how to wrap their bodies like in plastic and different things, saran wrap, so that they don't freeze. So this is the bridge here. And there's a path. That's where, if you go down under, there would be like a whole city. And so you would see people's clothes hanging and their campfire and whatever they had down there, because that was in fact where they lived. And I was crazy enough that I went down under there by myself in the early days. I now know that's not the safest thing to do, but again, I built relationships, so I knew the guys on the street would protect me. So they did. So in the winter of 1999, we had absolutely no place to call home ourselves as an organization. So the homeless shelter was in fact homeless itself. We put out a letter after praying, and God told us to put out a letter to all of the local churches to see who could step up and temporarily house the shelter while we were on our search for a long-term facility. 12 churches stepped up and one high school, and every single one of those locations chose a different 2-week period and covered the entire winter perfectly. So that was a miracle all by itself, the way that the calendar worked out and the scheduling. It was absolutely exhausting, but it was also a great way for us to raise awareness and volunteers, and for the community to come together to do this, to provide shelter and support and restore hope and renew lives for these people. So it was a beautiful time, but an exhausting time. And I really didn't want to do it again. So we had a long-term task force together, and as we were being told no, we still had to operate the shelter. At that time, I ran into Reverend Coffey. He said that he would love to show us Freedom Road. 25 Freedom Road we knew was our address because we served 25 people a night and offer them freedom to change their lives. So it was just, we knew that was our address. At the same time, his congregation had already committed 25 Freedom to someone else. So we continued our search, and I happened to be in a little Seventh-day Adventist church visiting on behalf of the shelter when all of a sudden during the prayer time I prayed for us to have some place to go, and a little old man in the back of the church stood up and said, "Well, that's silly. We have an empty building at 10959 Johnny Cake Ridge Road." And it was an old schoolhouse. They no longer had any children there. So we went into negotiation as church, and it was going to be the ideal building. I had already picked out our offices, already knew where the people were going to sleep. There was just one problem. We did not have $500,000, and we did not have, they couldn't make the price come down anymore. We couldn't go up anymore, so we were locked, and we were both very frustrated with that. So I went home that night, and I thought, God, this is really tiring, because remember, at the same time, we were going from church to church, operating in a different facility every 2 weeks, and trying to keep the mission going, trying to make sure people had somewhere warm to stay and somewhere to get their lives back on track. But at the same time, we were burdened with where are we going to go when this winter ended. At that very moment, my phone rang, and it was Reverend Coffey. And he said, "Hey, we have 25 Freedom Road. It's finally open for you," because we had been in conversation before. A whole year had gone by, and it was open now. So we moved in Christmas of 2000. When we were getting to the end of that winter of 99, we had to take some steps of faith on Freedom Road. At the time, we received a denial letter, and ironically enough, we received that on Friday the 13th, October the 13th of I think it was 99, yeah. And we had already moved our administration into the facility here at 25 Freedom Road. So we weren't really sure what was going to happen if we didn't get our conditional use permit approved, but everything ended up working out beautifully. I prayed, and I asked God, help us to be on the right track for this. It wasn't long after that, I got a phone call from an anonymous man, and he said, "Are you sitting down and get a notepad and a paper. I have the names of the zoning members, and you can call each one of them or do whatever you need to do to prepare for your hearing. You are on the right track. So as soon as I heard those words, I knew that it was going to be okay. We walked in, we had our hearing, and we got all 5 votes from the Paynesville Township Zoning Board. So it was a miracle, and we moved in Christmas of 2000, which was so awesome. We were able to spend Christmas morning here. The church is right here, Paynesville United Methodist, where we used to live for 5 years of our existence. This was our entryway right here. So that's where people would line up outside of here, and we were on the second floor of that educational wing, and that's where they would sleep, and we would have dinner here. So this is where we stayed, and we would greet them here at night, and they would have to go through a security check just like they do today. It was a little more lenient back then because I wasn't as street smart yet. But we still did checks on people to make sure they weren't going to be a problem or actively using or anything at the time. So when our shelter guests were, done at the end of every shelter season, we would have a celebration worship service to just share what God has done in their lives and all the miracles. So they would stand up there and tell their story, and for 5 years we did that here. So, and at the time it was Reverend Jerry Kalb that was our chairman of our board. This is the room where we would have our network meetings and meet with our supporters when we were having all the different churches come together to help us address the issue at the time. So, when we moved into 25 Freedom, we were super excited because now we knew we had somewhere where we could expand the season, and it was temporary. It used to be November through April was our operation. So we expanded our operation slowly, and eventually in 2005 we went year-round, and we started infrastructure-wise building up the staff and the administration so that we could run this full-scale operation. And that took a little time, and as we wrote each grant, each person went from being a volunteer to a paid position, including myself. So it went from very quickly from $300,000 or so once we were in the building to today is at almost $1.5 million operation. And that is a miracle all by itself because I didn't feel equipped to do any of it. I began as a homeless outreach worker, working on the streets and just having a love for the people. And God called me, and He called every single person here, and it has become a beautiful team of leaders and staff members and volunteers that support us. In 2006, I believe, we went from 25 to 35 beds. We finished some construction projects so we could have showers and just larger dorm spaces and things like that. In 2007, we began an aftercare program because what we were finding were the people that were living here would sabotage at the end of their stay, because this was often the only place where they felt like they had a close-knit family of support and accountability, and they didn't want to lose that. So we ended up starting an aftercare program where they could get case management, care packages, educational workshops, and that has been a huge success. Today we have at least 60 households at any given time in that program. And in 2009, we started a task force for the families because in 2008 the economy went down, and we were starting to see children come in with their parents on a more a regular basis. The children were terrified. They were around people that they weren't used to being around. It was not a child-friendly setup in the beginning. Remember, we were primarily serving individuals in the beginning. So we went on I think it was a 3-year task force for that, and studied it and researched it. And again, I said, well, if this is going to be what you want, God, you're going to have to provide the people that are willing to come beside us and help us. In response to the need for a family shelter, a local retired builder showed up at just the right time. We operated at 35 beds from 2007 to 2016. And at that time, we were turning away people left and right. So we decided it was time to increase, and we went to 50 beds, and we've remained at 50 beds since that time. He saw and had a compassion for the families, and then he put together a team that built us a $500,000 structure. And we did that with free labor and materials, $350,000 of free labor and materials, and we raised $200,000. And so now, in 2020, I think it was 2013, Families Moving Forward was actually launched off-site for 2 years at First Baptist Church on 84 in Paynesville Township. And they would stay there during the day, the families, and then they would come back here at night. And again, it wasn't really an ideal situation until the build was done. And in 2015, they are now able to stay in a consistent spot from 1 p.m. until 7 a.m. every day. So it's just a lot better for the families. They're under a lot less stress. The children can come in, they can play, they can do homework, they can take regular naps, they can get off the school bus here. It's just a lot. It's so much better for them. They're less traumatized.
This is the entrance to our adult shelter here. Guests will come in each night around 6:30. We're checking to make sure that people don't have medications or weapons, and if they do have medications, we take those and put those away and give those out at a certain time each night. And then we make sure they go through the metal detector here for safety purposes, and then they're on their way into the shelter. This is the adult lounge where our guests come in after they're checked in, and where they can stay a little bit before bedtime after they're done with their chores, and after dinner, and after talking with the staff and volunteers. This is the men's dormitory, where our guests sleep each night, and they have 2 totes for their belongings, and for a lot of people, that's everything that they own. Our guests are required to make their beds every day, and part of that is to provide structure and give them a sense that they've already started their day accomplishing something. This is our dining hall, where our guests come and eat each night and have breakfast in the morning, and it's a good time for fellowship and to be together with each other. And this is our Families Moving Forward wing of the building, where our guests who are families with children stay each night, and it's a very warming environment and more family-centered place for our guests to stay. This is our storage area, where we have some of our most needed supplies handy and available, including some new clothing and toiletries and household paper products. This is our chapel area, where our guests can come and have Bible studies on Fridays as part of programming. We also have classes such as financial literacy classes and budgeting to help our guests learn the skills that they really need moving forward.
And then in 2019, we saw the need for the growing senior population, which by 2035 we're told is going to be the majority population in Lake County. And all of a sudden we started seeing seniors show up to the shelter with maybe some of them were exploited by family, some of them had major medical issues, and could not be out on the street when it was blizzarding in their walkers and with different issues that they had. So we again reached out to the county to go on a tour of different places that have a senior transitional home, and we were able to launch that in 2019 with the help of private Cleveland Foundation, and then now it's supported by the senior levy for the county. So we have been able to help many, many seniors get successfully placed, and that issue continues to be, multiplied actually. So we might be growing that program soon. And then our most current project is the Welcome Home Center, which we were finding when people were getting ready to move out, they had absolutely nothing but the clothes on their back. And we do have a great network of providers in Lake County, so we do send them to different places like the Furniture Bank and all that, but they needed some of the smaller items that weren't donated, such as vacuum cleaners and coffee pots and things that you just don't think about until you don't have it. So we're building a Welcome Home Center, and it is just a 700 square foot type warehouse where we can house some of the items that we purchase for the families and individuals preparing to move into their homes. We're very, very blessed that we have more than an 80% success rate for, we serve about 500 people a year, and to have somebody come in that makes absolutely no eye contact and to see them come alive is huge. And not only to come alive, but to thrive. They end up, so many of them end up being leaders that I now look to for helping to get some of our people through recovery services. Some of them are chemical dependency counselors now, pastors. I even ran into a guy from the 90s. He called me, reached out. He said he is an announcer for television networks. It's just incredible to see people at their lowest points in their lives be able to come back, be board members, staff members, volunteers, and community leaders. I don't know, I feel like every day is Christmas when I wake up, because I get to see that, and I get to be in touch with people that I never thought were going to make it. I thought they were going to die. And today they're like, they passed me up. They're I'm hanging on to their coattails. So that's incredible.
I didn't have anywhere to go. So I ended up here at Project Hope for the homeless. It changed me how to appreciate life. It's hope for everybody. They just don't give up. Don't give up. Please don't give up. If I can do it, anybody can do it. I mean, God is good.
If Mom would have never called the shelter, I still would have been getting bullied. The thoughts that I had while being bullied was not something somebody in 6th grade should be having. I get teary-eyed thinking about it. It's just, I wouldn't have the amazing friends that I have today. We wouldn't have came back. I wouldn't have graduated from a school where I knew people. I don't know where my life would be. Honestly, I don't even want to think about it because that's scary.
So I think being in Lake County, we are a beautiful community. We're very tight-knit. We have great partnerships, which Project Hope for the Homeless has really been blessed with strong partnerships from every college and nonprofit and business and church in some way, shape, or form. But being in this community, there's a lot of people out there that don't even know the homeless shelter exists, or if they do know we exist, they really don't understand. There's still those stereotypes floating out there, but I would just ask that everybody think about the trauma we've all been through in these last 5 years even, and think about how stressed out we feel, and also think about a family member that you might have that's been on the edge or has experienced some type of distress. Mental illness is a whole nother stereotype. I think we all have some degree of it. We have anxiety, we have depression. Some people break and actually have psychosis where they hear and see things that aren't there. And these are all of our neighbors. And I don't think we realize it's going on right here in our own backyard. And this is a great opportunity to be able to help those people when they're down. They're not going to stay down. It's not like what people think. Nobody chooses to be homeless. Nobody really wants to remain in that muck and mire. They just don't know. They don't have the coping skills. Second, they really have a hard time with their emotional intelligence. As far as that goes, they don't have insight into their own issues. They don't even know that it's something they're dealing with until it's pointed out. And our case managers here are some of the cream of the crop. They are from every area you can imagine. They're here from different nonprofits, and they help them.
For many years, it's always been my passion to serve. And so when I heard about Project Hope for the Homeless as a place that helped local people who were homeless and in need and had different struggles that they were going through and hardships, it really struck me, because this is basically what I used to do before when I used to serve in New York City in various ministries helping with the homeless and the drug addicts there. So that was immediately attracted to that, because this is where my heart and my passion are. While serving here, one of the things I've noticed from serving here at Project Hope for the Homeless is that there's not only an incredible need in our community because people are struggling, but also that I'm able to be a part of the solution of helping people.
I knew they needed money. They needed people to help. So I had a team of agents and a team of people in my office, and I have a great sphere of people around me. And I decided to start doing golf outings. We've been doing those for 7 years. I think my team, they love to give back to the community. They understand the importance of giving back to the community because this is your backyard, this is where you live. Whatever you're doing, you need to do something to give back. If it's just opening up your pocket and giving money, it's one way, but if you feel that you can do it in another way, where you can band a team or put your team together and then put a function on of some sort that can make money for a homeless shelter, you should do it.
One of the reasons I wanted to be involved with Project Hope for the Homeless was because of the opportunities they give our students to learn about community issues and to be involved in being part of the solution.
I think it's really important for schools to support Project Hope for the Homeless. I think homelessness is the type of problem where if you ignore it, it only gets worse.
We can't do this without the community support. There's just no way we could have the success we have without people's hearts being moved. And so I just am appealing to you as my neighbor and community member to please come help people that are hurting during these really difficult times, because oftentimes all they need is to be heard, to have some dignity and respect afforded to them. And then when we give them the tools and the resources, they take off and they accomplish great, great things. I can't say enough about that. I consider a lot of the former shelter guests some of my closest friends today.